Esta conferencia comenzará a grabarse.
Welcome everybody. You know that we will share the recording of the session in the European Cluster Collaboration Platform, and this is a meeting of the European Alliance Against Coronavirus. As you also know, this is organized by the European Cluster Alliance with the European Commission, DG GROW, and the collaboration of EURADA and the European Cluster Collaboration Platform. So this is an open forum. We will hear 4 speakers today. The topic is the textiles industrial ecosystem. The idea is to analyze what is that ecosystem, who is inside, and what are the links also, and how can we link the ecosystem with the recovery plans and if possible, the activities of clusters on that ecosystem. Okay, the proposal is to be very concrete in the information and in the if we make references or proposal or examples. Okay, so for doing that, we have today Michael Garelik from DG GROW, Stefan Berin from Euromaterials, Robin Odon from Textile, and Antonio Braz Costa from CITEBE. Those are the 4 speakers. We will hear them, and later we will open the floor for any question, comment, suggestion from the rest of the attendants. If you are not speaking, please put your mic off. That will help us to have a better quality in the communication. Okay, and without further delay, I will give the floor to Michael Garelik. Welcome.
Thank you. Could you give me access so I can share the presentation on the screen?
Yeah, I'm doing that. Yes, now. Just one moment.
Sure.
Ah, okay, because I was looking for Michael. Okay. Now.
All right. Can you see it?
Yes, yes, not in full screen, but yes, we see the presentation. It will be better if you can put it in full screen mode.
I will try. Oops.
I think it's in the slideshow, in the menu, slideshow.
Yes. The thing is.
Now in the top menu.
Yes.
More or less in the middle of the option, slideshow.
I will go down now.
Yeah.
Let's see.
And the first option from the beginning.
Yes, there we go.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So thank you very much for the invitation. So I will give a brief presentation about the textile ecosystem, which is one of 14 industrial ecosystems that have been identified by the Commission as strategic in the recovery of the COVID-19 outbreaks. Now, the ecosystem includes textile, clothing, leather, and footwear. And the ecosystem generates a turnover of 198 billion. It includes 212,000 companies, and it employs 1.93 million workers. As you can see from the slide, in the textile sector, more than 70% of people working in that sector are women. Following a long period of restructuring, turnover, number of companies and employment had started to stabilize in the ecosystem. Textile producers are finding niche markets and are no longer competing with cheaper imports. Main interests are in high-end clothing, technical textile, auto applications, medical textile, agro-textile, and protective clothing. Some brief facts about the ecosystem. EU consumption of clothes and footwear is around 400 billion euros per year, which is about 5% of household consumption. And as you can see from this slide, the best dressed Europeans are the Luxembourgians. They spend 1,200 euros per person a year on clothes. The Italians 900, Spaniards 500, and the Slovaks 200. A lion's share of EU production of clothes are made in Italy, just over 40%. The biggest share, 1/4 of technical textile, is produced in Germany. 27% of EU carpets are produced in Belgium, and Spain is the second largest exporter of clothes. Now, the whole ecosystem has been hard hit by the COVID crisis. Most companies operate in complex value chains, making them dependent on external supplies, which can easily be disrupted. Almost all of the production capacities have been subject to closure, and many retail shops have also been closed during the lockdown. For over 60% of companies, sales dropped by more than 50%, and 30% of companies reported that sales dropped by more than 80% during the second quarter during the lockdown. Calculations for 2020 estimate losses in turnover of around 30%. No quantitative figure on job losses are available, but 80% of companies were laying off workers, thus putting hundreds of thousands of jobs at risk. Specifically in the fashion industry, sales are time sensitive. The summer season cannot be postponed or recovered. It is simply lost. Now, a few words about the investment for recovery package. So, as you know, member states will propose the national recovery plans, and then the Commission will assess that the investments proposed are in line with the different political objectives that have been agreed. So it aims at making our single market more resilient, while also financing key investments to allow the EU to bounce forward in the green and digital transitions. Let me just mention some proposals from the ecosystem recovery that are being discussed and will hopefully be presented and proposed by the member states. So as you know, the textile ecosystem, it has a strong and growing impact on the environment and climate. In the light of the mandatory separate collection of textile waste, which will start on the 1st of January 2025, one idea is to establish recycling hubs near textile plants to make raw materials by collecting, sorting, processing, and recycling textile waste. Another idea is to provide subsidies to switch to renewable energy sources for the production. And then with regard to digitalization, a key challenge for the ecosystem remains the digitalization of companies that do not yet take full advantage of the opportunities offered by digital technology. Textile, clothing, and footwear collections, as an example, used to be presented at trade fairs. But with the COVID epidemic, there is great uncertainty for the future of such fairs. Hence, in this context, support could be provided to SMEs to create digitally virtual collections for textile, clothing, and footwear, which could then be presented to wholesale and retail buyers. Concerning diversification of the sales channels, the most popular type of goods purchased online in the EU are in fact clothes and sports goods. 65% of e-buyers. And during the epidemic, with high street shops in lockdown and businesses and consumers under social distancing restrictions, e-commerce sales have grown even further. So one idea is to provide support to SMEs to go online and to sell online. As you know, the ecosystem has mainly consists of SMEs, but only 18% of small enterprises have engaged in e-sales and generate just 8% of their turnover. So in this context, companies need to diversify their sales channels, and investments could be provided to help companies access online marketplaces, producing the necessary content, photos and videos, stock management, logistics and digital communication to provide them the necessary support with regard to e-commerce. I think that my 10 minutes have passed. Thank you very much for your attention. So that concludes my brief presentation about the textile ecosystem.
You are very welcome, Mikael. So that is a clear image of the ecosystem. Before introducing the three cluster managers that we have today with us, I would like to share with you the data that the ECCP has about the clusters on the textile ecosystem. Marek, would you comment the data?
Yes, if I may. Thank you, Antonio. So definitely it's not as huge cluster as we had yesterday, group of enterprises. We had in health 128 related clusters. In textiles, we have 25 industrial clusters in Europe. There are 2,000, they bring together 2,000 members. Again, like 3/4 of them are SMEs, 1,600 SMEs. Mainly in Spain, Belgium, Italy, France. These are the clusters which we have identified in European cluster collaboration platform on the basis of declarations. So I'm sure something, in my view, in Italy is underestimated here. There is one gold label, meaning that the cluster is very well managed from Denmark. And then the services which are supported by cluster organizations are typical for all the other cluster organizations. So thank you for this, and I think the textiles is particularly interesting because it was always considered as a traditional sector, but it's from my experience it's very innovative, and what happened in northern Sweden, it's a fantastic example how you can switch from old mindset about textiles to very modern way of applications as well. Thank you.
You are very welcome, Marek. So now we pass to the real cases of clusters. Thank you for joining us again, Stefan. I am really pleased to have you here, and I am sure that you will give us very valuable information. Please, the three of you, focus on the future. We are not at this moment thinking about what happened. We need to think about what are we going to propose to do in the recovery plans. That is the general recommendation. Stefan, I'm giving you the presentation rights.
Okay, perfect.
The floor is yours.
Okay, do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, I will just need to move on.
Perfect.
Okay, great. Okay, so basically, just in few words, how can we explain ourselves? We are Euromaterials, which is basically the merger, a new name, which is a merger of two previous clusters last year, which was Uptex, which was really dedicated to textile and technical textile, and Matichem, which has a cluster more dedicated to green chemistry and material sciences. So now we are Euromaterials, and so basically we are we are mixing different issues all together. We are an innovation cluster, what we call in France a pôle de compétitivité, but we have also inside of us a business club for business-to-business development of our SMEs, which is Clubtex. We have also launched this year an incubator and accelerator, and one being a reference place for advanced materials across Europe. Also, something which is one of the spec or one of the characteristic of a cluster is we are already cross-border. We have Belgian members. We are located mainly in northern France, as you see, but we have already quite a lot of Belgian companies and Belgian research centers which are members of the clusters. And also we start to have strong links with Netherlands and Netherlands companies and research centers as well. So it's also one of the part of the discussion is we are strongly believed that part of the solution is not within our borders, but part of the solution should be reached at EU level through better cooperation between industries and research organizations at this level. Quickly, advanced materials, but why we are talking about advanced materials is it is because all of those companies in textile, plastic, paper, etc., mainly we have the same suppliers and we have the same clients. We don't use the same processes, but sometimes processes are really linked each other's, like a surface treatment. But all of those companies are facing and dealing with the same issues. So it's a rationale behind the clusters. If you move on textile, we are not really focused, not so much on apparel and garment industries, either for personal protective equipment. We are much more focused on our companies are much more focused in technical textile. Technical textile, without technical textile, you don't have implants, you don't have face masks, you don't have airplanes, you don't have tires for your car, you don't have sports and leisures, you don't have a lot of solution in building and civil engineering, etc., etc. So basically, we are really believing that textile is really one of the material solutions for tomorrow and for the recovery of the European industry. I will focus a bit on the action plan we launched with the national government, the French national government within the recovery plan. As you know, the French government launched the recovery plan just a few weeks ago. We have already calls which has been launched, and we are really active on this subject. What we say to the national government, we said that basically everything is materials. Materials are everywhere, but lots of time they are forgotten, and especially textile, because basically, as it has been expressed by the European Commission, most of our companies, most of the industries is dominated by SMEs. And so those SMEs doesn't really exist in the landscape from, if you see from above, but all those SMEs needs, they are transversal and they are upstream positions, and so they are discussing with all the markets. Also, another point is, of course, there can't be a recovery plan if you are not dealing with materials. If you are not considering, okay, what are the critical value chains we need to secure? What are the critical value chains for tomorrow with the life cycle and recycling, and how can we set up and how can we develop that? As it has been expressed as well, digitalizations, factory for the futures are really a key subjects for our companies. Last but not least, we also saw that with the COVID-19 crisis that that a key role in the processing industries. Plastics for respirators, mass productions, tubes for beds, forest wood paper for critical packagings, etc. So basically what we said, first action was to secure sovereignty of production chains in the materials processing industries. As you know, the French government launched already some calls to secure and attract development of new companies, for example, for filtration media in membrane producers, but also some critical plastics industries, etc. So what we've done since the last few weeks and months, we support some innovation management and support in new, for example, how can you produce new kind of mask? How can you substitute membrane by other kind of materials like cellulosic fibers, for example? How can you improve the efficiencies of these productions? But also we are working quite a lot at this period of time with our regional and national in-one investment agencies to support in-one investment projects. What we saw, and it's really interesting for Europe, we saw that some US and Asian companies, they saw that the supply chain are so weak. In few weeks, we saw that all the supply chain can be totally disrupted. And those companies which were really confident that when you are only producing in Asia is enough, now they are considering that they need to produce much closer to their customers. So there's a kind of a trend at this period of time, and this trend should be really supported. There's a kind of a trend to invest in Europe, and so we are really working hard on this subject at this period of time. Another point is value chains. Value chains are critical, but value chains are not in the regions. Value chains are not really in a member state. Value chains are across Europe now. And so what we are looking at, and with our regions, but also we hope to look at it at EU level, perhaps with some our partners. Like I know that Braz is on phone, is online today, but with all the textile clusters in Europe, is to look at where are the critical actors of the value chain for each materials. Also, we are really active at this period of time with green deals and recycling. And recycling is really, I strongly support the ideas of moving on some recycling hubs across Europe. It's something we are already working on with our Belgium and Netherlands partners because we have all the value chain on this part. And it's one of the key subjects we are working at this period of time. We're also working on new bio-based sourced fibers. Of course, new bio-based chemistry fibers, but also natural fibers. You know that something which is crazy at this period of time is that Europe is producing flax, especially in northern France and Belgium. Most of those flax is shipped from Europe to China to be spun and come back to Europe, because we don't have, except in Poland, we don't have any more spinner in Europe. So how can we recreate a full value chain of flax in Europe that to really support our industries? That's a kind of subject we are working at this point of time. Also, when we are talking about recycling, something which is interesting is if you look at the last 10 years for the apparel and garment industries, there was not really real innovations, because most of the end users, the retailers, they are all the brands, they are only thinking about volumes, producing volumes and reducing values. So mainly, which means outsourcing in Asia. And now they are thinking, because that recycling, it's a key subject for them. Life cycle analysis of their product, it's a key subject for them. And now it's a trend. It's pushed a lot the brands and retailers to move back to consider again how can we recreate links with the upstream, with the industries which are producing fabrics, and how can we recycle them. So it's pushed them to move on innovation, and it's something which started just before COVID and which is moving forward and really fast at this period of time. Innovation, of course, we are still pushing quite a lot in innovation. Something which is really important at this part of time and within the French National Recovery Plan is we saw that now, and it's a good news, we have some companies which are investing, not only developing projects or products through innovation, but they are investing in factory for the future. So new materials, new equipments, new technologies, but also digitalizations. And that it's really, we have at least 10 projects at this period of time on this subject, and it's never happened. And it's because it's true that at this period of time, with the recovery plan, we really open in France the gate for investment. And so there's a strong demand from the industries to use this period of time, which is a tragic period, but also sometime in Chinese, in China, it is the same word or the same sign for crisis and opportunities. So some of our companies, they are using this period of time to invest, and I think it's really a strong signal. A new point is we consider now that a part of the future of the industry is relying in new startups and new companies. So we launch a new incubator. So currently we have now 10 startups which we are following. It's a first step, but it's a good step. The problem is, and it's something I would like to raise at EU level, it's you don't launch a new company or a new startup in materials or in textile like you launch a startup in IT, because those startups will need a lot of capitals. We are capitals we are capitalistic industries. All companies will need machines, will need plans, and it's quite a lot of investment needs for startups. So we need some special investment funds for our new startups in the next following years. Okay, next steps. We have already launched a working group, and with Textile, Robin is with us today, but also we are thinking to launch it also at a cross-border level to support, which is still the actuality, unfortunately, working on product, on masks and PPE for this crisis, with the end of life of the product, and also to improve the efficiencies of those products. And we are also really open to discuss with it at EU level with other clusters. We already had a move with Spain, and as you know, Antonio, but we can really work on it at EU level. Something which is important in business. Actually, the situation of the companies is not so bad, is not so good. If you are companies which are working for the garment and apparel industry, is really awful. In reverse, companies which are working for home textile, it's really good, because there's a kind of a cocooning. People are quarantined at home, and so they're investing for their home. Those companies are not in bad situation. In technical textile, it depends on the end products, the end market. If you are working for the automotive or aerospace sector, it's catastrophic. If you are working for building sector, if you're working for the industry, it's quite okay. So there's a lot of differences between the companies depending their end of life market, their end market. However, we don't have any more fairs. Everything closed. Germany just announced that all the main fairs in Germany are cancelled from January to March next year. So we need to launch EU virtual B2B events in order to support meetings between companies. That's something which is that companies are waiting for. On business, we're also working still on mask from Melbourne and non-movement quite a lot. And last but not least, medium term, we need to rethink altogether industrial value chains to ensure self-sufficiency of Europe and France. In a lot of subjects, of course, at this period of time, we are talking quite a lot, still quite a lot, unfortunately, about COVID, but we need to think after the COVID, what will be the critical value chains we need to focus on. Last but not least, something we need to consider is that the business models of our companies tomorrow will probably not be the same business models of the companies today. I don't have clues, but it's something we need to consider and to think about. Okay, thanks a lot and ready for any questions.
Thank you to you. Merci beaucoup, Stéphane. It has been a master class on what we what you are doing, but you are a perfect model of what clusters can do. So congratulations. It has taken some time to explain, but it was, I think that every minute was important. So we have 15 minutes, 30 minutes for two other interventions, and if possible, to a dialogue. Now it's the turn of Robin O'Donnell. Robin, welcome from Textile. I will give you the presentation rights, and I hope that. No, we are not hearing you. Your mic is off. No, now it's disabled. Now, please. Oh, no. Yes, try now.
Yes, I think it's back. I have microphone problems, but thank you. All better now.
Welcome,
Okay.
Robin. Go on, please. The floor is yours.
Okay. Mhm. Okay, can you all see my screen correctly?
Perfect.
Oops. Okay. So I will try to be as fast as possible. So the objective of my presentation here, to answer the stakes of today's discussion, would be to examine the position of clusters in relation with both the ecosystem and the policymakers in order to determine our role and our different possibilities, what we can do. So I will not dwell on that slide, but what I want to say about us, to give you an idea of what the ecosystem is that amongst our 200 plus members, more than 2/3 of them are SMEs, and a lot of these SMEs are very small companies with less than 20 employees, which is something that has to be taken into account when it comes to implementing recovery plans, which are dedicated to entire industries and ecosystems. Yeah, let's not take any more time to present you the summary. What have French clusters been doing regarding recovery plans? So the interesting thing, I think it's probably the same thing in all of Europe, but it's especially the case in France. There are recovery plans on 3 different levels: the European level, of course, the national level, and also the regional level. And clusters have taken action on all of these 3 levels. The good thing being that even if we have different stakeholders and different relationships, of course, with them, they all share global objectives that are the same. So in all of the recovery plans, you will find objectives in terms of innovation, competitiveness, skills development, territories resilience, etc., which is, well, a good thing for us. So what do we do? Usually, we support innovation, we develop dynamic and wealth-creating ecosystems, we develop cooperation and synergies, and we reinforce international competitiveness. So what has changed since the addition of these new recovery plans? Well, what we have to do is to link the ecosystems to the new recovery tools. We knew the tools that existed, but there are new ones that we need to make understandable and available to our ecosystems. We also need to act as the interface between policymakers and the ecosystem. So to my opinion, it's something that's really the most important, and that is the strong role that clusters can play, whether they are French, another country, textile industry, or another ecosystem. It's really something that we can have a strong added value to, especially when it comes to helping SMEs accessing the tools of the recovery plans. And then, of course, we have to initiate and support the initiative of the ecosystem towards recovery. So what have we been doing? So I think it's interesting to go back to before the establishment of the plan, so we can show how clusters can directly deal with policymakers and the ecosystem. So we have been gathering information from the ecosystems and for us, for the textile industry, in order to understand what were the short-term, the middle-term, and the long-term needs and problems of the ecosystems. Then we've been gathering information from the policymakers in order to see what were their objectives and what we could do to support both policymakers and the ecosystems. And in a way, we've been acting as a point of contact and reference for both. We have the ability to understand both sides and to represent both sides to the other. I will give you two examples. The first one is a direct contribution to the French National Recovery Plan. So within the frame of the AFPC, the French Association for Product Competitivité, we've established a list of recommendations from the French industrial ecosystems, including the textiles. And so the idea was to gather together and to, with our expertise, to propose a list of recommendations that would be adapted to the needs of the ecosystems, because we have the ability to know what's going on into the ecosystems and to interpret it, and then to propose some ideas that would improve the situations. And some recommendations, I will not say all of them, but some of them have been adopted by the government, especially regarding R&D financing and cooperations between universities and companies. So this shows that we have the legitimacy to act as representatives of the textile ecosystems. And then we've been also contributing directly to the French national plans by feeding back information to policy makers regarding the state of the textile industry, the needs of companies. And so we could provide the substantial intelligence for the establishment of the plans. During the implementations of the plans, so basically, what do we do now? The first one, we've been presenting a couple of webinars to present the recovery plans to our ecosystem. So I'm talking here for Textera, but it's been the case for most of the clusters that I know. So the objective, of course, is to understand the information coming from the policymakers, to interpret it, and to make it usable for our members, so we can direct them towards the best tools. Which is why, at the same time, we've been surveying the interest of companies towards the various recovery tools. We've been supporting the company's projects addressed to these tools. So I'll just give you one example, well, two examples. We are working on two relocation projects for the textile industry in our region. So it's relocation for territorial development. Of course, we've been supporting companies at the European level, and We've been also pursuing our activities towards international business development, which is, of course, important because companies are interested in making big investment, but they still need to have short-term possibilities. The good thing is that we have been able to decide jointly with our main policy maker for this aspect, which is the region, to adapt our action. So I will not give you more details in order to spare time, but it is good to know that you can discuss with the policymakers in order to provide the right tools and to adapt to the situation. Then we've been pursuing the already established actions that match the recovery plan's objective. For example, the circular economy, we had begun working on that before. We are going to continue. And we are monitoring and reporting actions to the policymakers in order to provide an improved feedback and hoping that it will bring a global agility to the system. So in terms of keywords regarding the topics that we are dealing with. Well, we still have innovation, digitization, green transition, competitiveness, etc., etc. So we are covering a huge part of the topics of the recovery plans, and we have this ability to deal also directly with policymakers, especially on the regional level, but also on the national level, and well, maybe a bit harder on the European level, but it's of course also possible. What are the current limitations that we have identified? So the idea is not to say that the tools provided are not efficient or not relevant. Powerful tools exist, and textile has been identified as a key industrial ecosystem. However, well, first, this is the case in Europe. It's not as much the case in France on the national and regional level. The first thing that I would say is there may be a lack of financing tools for clusters as actors of the recovery plans. A lot of tools exist for financing clusters at the European or national level. But I think that it's important for clusters to be also considered as powerful and real stakeholders of the implementation of the recovery plans. Then SMEs are often very reliant on major industrial players in order to access the tools. And as I said before with our example, textile ecosystem is full of SMEs and a lot of small SMEs. For example, in France, at the moment, we have less financing for small budget collaborative projects and more for big, huge, very expensive projects that involve a big group as a leader and SMEs as partners or even just subcontractors. So it may not be the most adapted thing for our ecosystem. There is also, we think, a lack of financing tools for interfacing companies and academia, which is important in France because, for example, we're not as efficient, culturally speaking, as Germany when it comes to linking companies and academia. Then textile is, as Stefan already presented, a very shattered ecosystem when it comes to applicative markets. So the needs are extremely different from a market to another, from companies to another, and with market-targeted recovery plans, like it is the case for most of the French recovery plans, the benefits for the ecosystems are really unbalanced. For example, I think we don't have time for an example, so I just go to the last one. Relocation policies. So as we are working on the subject, I think they would benefit from interregional cooperation within Europe. If I take the example of meltblown, which is a material that is needed for developing filtration media, there has been projects for relocating parts of the value chain that were not available in sufficient number in Europe, but relocation policies in France or in the region, they are very territorial. The idea is to bring back a factory on a very specific territory, and I think that cooperation within the region could be very beneficial because because we would be able to relocate entire value chains by spreading also the value chains in the different regions between Europe. So we are involved currently in an initiative called Regiotex, which provides, which is a collaboration framework for textile region. I think that this sort of structure can be very helpful in this regard. So quickly, a conclusion. I strongly think that clusters can facilitate the implementation of recovery plans by acting as the interface between policymakers and the ecosystems. The policymakers have specific needs and capacity. The ecosystems have specific needs and capacities, and the clusters have the ability to digest, share information, to both have a macro and micro vision. So the idea here is that cluster can understand both sides. It can be the link between them in order to make the recovery plans more efficient, to make it work the best for the stakeholders of the recovery plans. That will be all for me. So thank you for your attention, and if you have any questions, I'm ready to answer them. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Robin. And I need to say that I am impressed by the quality of your presentation, the clarity of the ideas, and how well you defend our role. Congratulations.
Thank you. I hope I didn't speak too fast. I could barely understand myself.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And now it's time to hear Antonio Braz Costa from CITEB. Antonio, can you are muted at this moment? Can you unmute yourself?
Of course.
Thank you. Should I give you the presentation rights?
Sorry?
Do you have a presentation?
Yeah, a little presentation, yes.
I will give you the role of presentator now.
And now I have to, okay. And, okay. Hello?
Yes, but we are not seeing your screen yet.
I lost you. Okay. Can you see my presentation?
Not yet. I don't know if we have your presentation.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yes, perfect. Thank you very much. Please go on.
So, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to share with you some information about the activities of the textile cluster in Portugal. First of all, I wanted to share with you some information about not only the formal cluster, but the natural cluster we have in Portugal. You know, almost all the industry is concentrated in a small part of Portugal, in the north of Portugal, about 90%. And after the drop of the big companies with a vertical approach, the level of specialization of the companies generated in the last years a collaboration scheme between them. So we consider that in reality we have in Portugal a natural cluster. In any case, we have the formal cluster with a part of those companies. As in our cluster, we have a strong participation of the scientific and technological sector, like CITEB and CENTI. We consider always that all the activities we have inside the cluster have to have spillovers in all sectors in Portugal, in the natural cluster. To understand what this means, the north of Portugal is the biggest region in Europe in terms of textile employment. And exactly because Portugal is not the biggest country in Europe, but north of Portugal is the biggest region. And here you have our track records in terms of companies and workers. We lost lots of companies, we lost lots of employment, but you can see in the right graph the reaction of this sector after 2009. I will share some more information. This indicator is very important. The turnover per employee grew more than 50% in the last decade. Okay. In principle, it's not difficult to have this performance when we transform a country from industry to trade, but this is not the case in Portugal. You can see the difference between production and turnover, and the difference between these two indicators is very low, about 200 million euros per year. So we are really industrial, and all the activity of the cluster, all the importance of this cluster in the Portuguese economy is a big driver for our intervention. These are the figures 2019. We exported more than 5.3 billion euros, mainly for Europe, but also for foreign countries. Yeah. And we cannot see the future without have good information about the past. This sector is a very resilient sector, resisted to very severe attacks in the last years or last decades. From the integration of Portugal in European Union, we faced a lot of different challenges. The first one was to improve the quality. Portugal was a very low quality producer in textiles, and during one decade we transformed completely this sector in Portugal. We created a scientific and technological subsector inside textile. Companies changed completely. But in 2000, the extent of our markets to Asia, it was a problem to Portugal because we started to be pressed between the more advanced countries working in luxury or technical textiles and the emerging countries in terms of labor cost. Yeah, we had a drop at this moment. Between 2001 and 2005, we had a drop of more than 20% in turnover. We restart to grow, and in 2009 it was you know, all sectors in all world had exactly the same reaction. So we drop again 20%. Between 2009 and 2019, we recover all the two drops, the first and the second. So the record ever of exports was reached in 2019. You can see the different challenges or main challenges we faced in the last. Sorry, we faced in the last years or decades, and of course, this was our strategy for the future to bet in sustainability and circular economy, of course, product breakthrough and digitalization. Like I think the most part of the textile clusters in Europe or in the world, nothing new. Oh, and COVID. Yeah, COVID. At the end of March, almost of our companies were closing their orders, no more orders. And the result of that was layoff for everyone. And the company started to close. At the same time, some companies said to the technological center, to CITEV, I want to help health system and people. I want to offer protective equipment or masks or whatever, offer. But I don't know nothing about that, nothing about masks, nothing about guns and so on. Please help. And we start to help companies to start the production of this kind of products. Maybe 1 week. In the next week, this trouble was transformed in an opportunity. From 1st April till last of July, the Technological Center received in their labs more than 15,000 samples to test. And we certified more than 5,000 new products. Some companies were in layoff and they decided to retake the activity. At the end of the day, I mean, at the end of the semester, my dear friends, 8% drop is very, very sweet for us. As you know, all the fashion business were closed during more than 3 months. So reach this point with just 8% drop in our turnover is really, really sweet at this moment. Yeah, but the show must go on. This situation, to substitute the traditional business by gowns and masks and everything, it was amazing for this sector during this month, but this is not the future. The future will be very different because we have competitors. We cannot maintain low-cost production, and at the end of the day, we have to recover all the lines we had in the past. Of course, green and digital and everything, you know, but in this case, with some add-ons, thinking about the recovery of the economy. In Portugal, the program name is Program for Recovery, Economic Recovery and Resilience. What's very interesting for us, the point is not to put money on the companies. The idea is to create more resilience in the sector, more resilience in the Portuguese economy. I think for the first time in a crisis time, I see the determination of a government to bet in infrastructure. I mean, to bet in the future of the companies and the sectors. And this is more or less, in very simple words, of course, each one of these squares had lots of information, but in a simple way, I simplify what is the strategy, our strategy for the future. Of course, this strategy was, is, and will be negotiated between the cluster. And when we talk about cluster, we are talking about the cluster members. In our case, we don't have a special structure for governance. The governance of the cluster, in this case, is assured by the technological center. So the cluster, I mean, the institutions and the more relevant companies are negotiating, influencing, lobbying with the government in order to construct the plan for the future. First pillar, of course, materials, my dear. Yeah, materials is the base. No circularity, no energy efficiency, no nothing without material science and technology. Yeah, of course, circularity depends on mindset of consumers, depends on everything, but without a strong capacity in terms of material science and technology, nothing is possible. And in this point, a very special approach to the bioeconomy. Bioeconomy is a horizontal line for all the economy in Portugal now, and we developed a very strong line in this area. First of all, reduce our dependence from other parts of the world production of natural fibers. Second, to push in order to adopt new kind of fibers more able to be recycled, not mechanically recycled, reducing the performance in 80 or 70%, but going directly to bioprocesses, chemical processes, in order to recover all the material. Of course, we are talking about cellulose, no way, no alternative for that, but also some agricultural productions. Okay, the traditional ones, hemp, pineapple, banana, these kind of things, but also to establish strong symbiosis with other sectors, namely with agro-food sector, in order to identify and exploit new sources of fibers. The second one, the portfolio transition. We must move on, always. Luxury is more and more a business in Portugal. Yeah, and we have to improve our capacity in this area. High-tech textiles, of course, and sustainable growth. Portugal is now one of the, how to say that, recognized countries, a source of more sustainable products. But you know, the criteria is moving. In the past, including 5% of recycled fibers in a fabric was good. Nowadays is nothing. So this point is very important because we need lots of development, lots of interaction between companies and scientific institutions and so on. 3, digital transition. Of course, automation, digital business, and dematerialization of business traditions, like trade fairs or samples or these kind of things. And finally, digital transition is very important to support the circularity. Without certification, validation, and traceability, it is not possible to generate value around circularity. Energetic transition, low energy processes. 1 minute or 2?
Now, I see that you have a lot of information to share. I want to say, for me, it's good, okay? We need to extend the session. I want to just say that those that cannot keep in the session, thank you and bye. But for the rest, for me, it's good and it's important to hear you. Okay, it's just to say to those that needs to leave, have a good weekend, and for me, you can continue. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just 1 minute. Okay. The next pillars are okay. Are horizontal pillars, but I want to spend 1 minute with the last one, clustering. We are concerned and we have some ideas to exploit, first of all, interclustering. One of the base of our success in technical textiles depends on the cross link with other clusters. Of course, the traditional ones like automotive, health, and so on, but other clusters. The second point is to implement a philosophy identifying mobilizers and mobilized companies. We have big companies, more active companies, we have small companies. We learn a lot about that during the pandemic peak, the first pandemic peak. From the companies that came to the technological center to access to our services, 1,000 never came before. Why? Because those companies were very small companies, traditionally working eyed by the big companies in producing to larger companies. So this base is very important to qualify for the future, to improve their skills. And the example during the pandemic was that they rejected to be exploited by big companies and went directly to the market proposing their products. So in any case, we will exploit the effect of the tractors, the mobilizer companies bringing to the market, exposing to the market the smaller companies we have in Portugal that I consider very, very high-skilled companies, mainly in the manufacture subsector. So this is what we are preparing for the future, and I hope we can quickly recover the trend from the last decade. Of course, I think that's impossible to recover all the business till the end of this year. It's not a shame, but I'm certain we have conditions profiting from reshoring, profiting from our circularity or sustainability growth, and mainly our mindset oriented to flexibility and quick response. That's it.
Wonderful, wonderful, Antonio. I'm sorry because I see that we could be speaking about your plans for far longer time, but yeah, we are out of time. But anyway, I would like to give at least the opportunity to 1 or 2 questions for those that can remain here. Okay, 1 or 2 questions from the attendants and before closing. Is there anyone that could, wants to ask or comment? If not, we will.
So Antonio, we are finishing, but I would like to thank fantastic 3 presentations, really excellent, really, and very helpful, insightful. For Robin, just very quickly because there's no time. You mentioned your recommendations and reach out. Many people in Europe have problem, I mean clusters in Europe, to reach out to the public authorities with their recommendations or being involved in the process. Would you give them a hint how they could do it? I mean, you are happy or you are lucky that you are in the system, but there are many who are not. Would you give some hint?
Yeah, I agree. It really depends on how the policymaker works. I think for one thing, on the national level, it really helped that we worked together with the other French clusters, because it's not every French cluster that sent a list of recommendations for its ecosystem. It's the global association of all clusters that gave recommendations for all ecosystems. So it's really providing strong, consolidated, and thought about information. So I think getting closer to the other clusters in the other ecosystems can really give them a more legitimacy when it comes to make a recommendation to a policymaker. I think Stefan wants to add something.
Yeah, thanks, Robin. I fully support what you said. Perhaps another issue or recommendation for the European Commission is, as you know, most of the regions are currently discussing about their smart specialization strategy for the next funding round of structural funds. Could be really useful that clusters should be involved with the regions in discussing the smart specialization strategy, which is the case in the region, and I think it's the case in most of the French regions. But I think at EU level, to involve clusters in smart specialization strategy, it's a good way also to create legitimacy for those clusters at a regional level.
I have good news in that field. We have been invited to participate in the event that is preparing the DG Regio next month about the new strategies. And we also spoke with Valentina Pina in a previous session about the possibility to participate on the expert group that they are working or defining now for the next strategy. So we totally agree with you, Stefan. We need to be there at all the levels, from the top to the down. So totally agree. Thank you. So and in fact, we will have a morning session next month dedicated to prepare the proposals for that special meeting. Okay, so you will see the invitation in our email list for retrieving and preparing a common proposal at the European level. So thank you, everyone. I am sharing now the invitation for the next Monday special session. Please take in account that it will start 1 hour later. It will be organized at the same time that the Bulgarian event Bioeconomy as driver for green, sustainable, and inclusive growth. You are invited to attend, okay? And anyway, you are invited to attend any other session. Thank you. Have a very good weekend. Congratulations for the work done today to everyone.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, Antonio.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day, everyone.